Welcome to International Management, the podcast that breaks down the core challenges and strategies of global business. Based on Orlando Casabon's scripts for his international management class, each episode offers practical insights, clear strategies, real-world examples, and expert guidance to help you navigate complex global landscapes. For additional resources, visit casabon.com. Now, let's dive into the essentials of international management.
Hey everyone, ready to level up your negotiation skills? Today we're taking a deep dive into the art of negotiation, how to become better at it, whether you're hammering out a business deal or just trying to decide what's for dinner. You sent over some really fascinating research about global negotiation and decision-making. I gotta say, some of these cultural differences are pretty wild.
Oh yeah, they really are. It's like a secret code. If you know how different cultures approach negotiation, you've got a real advantage. Could be the difference between, closing a deal or walking away empty-handed.
Totally. So Orlando's script, it lays out this 5-phase framework for any negotiation, makes you think about it strategically.
It all starts with preparation. That's the foundation.
So no winging it. Makes sense. What does that look like in practice, though?
Think of it like buying a car. You wouldn't walk into a dealership without knowing what you want, your budget, right?
Yeah.
Or what other dealerships are offering.
No way, I'd get totally ripped off.
Exactly. That's basically defining your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's your safety net, your walkaway point. Helps you figure out your ZUB too, the zone of possible agreement, where the deal can actually happen.
Okay, so knowing my BTNA and ZUBI sets the boundaries. Got it. Then what? Do I just jump in with my demands?
Hold on. Next comes relationship building. Making a good first impression, finding some common ground,
That reminds me of this time I was in Morocco. I was trying to buy a rug from a local artisan. We spent like an hour just drinking mint tea, talking about life, before we even mentioned the price.
Perfect example. Building those relationships is huge in certain cultures, especially in Asia and the Middle East. They might even involve mediators, trusted third parties, to keep things running smoothly.
Wow. That's so different from how we usually do things here.
Okay.
So prep work done, relationships built. What's next?
Now we get down to business, information exchange. Asking the right questions is key. It's like being a detective, gathering intel to understand the other side's perspective, what they need.
But isn't it more about just saying what I want?
Well, if you just throw out demands without getting where they're coming from, you might miss out on a solution that could be even better for both of you. Active listening is huge, too. Don't just hear the words, pay attention to how they're saying it. Different cultures, they share information in very different ways.
Right, so if I'm dealing with someone from Germany, they might be super direct.
Yeah.
But someone from Japan might be more subtle. I'll need to pay closer attention.
Exactly. Adaptability is key.
Okay, groundwork laid, relationships built, intel gathered. Time to bring out the big guns. Persuasion time.
You got it. Phase 4 is where you make your case, win them over to your side. It's not about bulldozing them, though. More like a friendly debate, Present your arguments, but be ready to adapt.
So I shouldn't just stick to the script no matter what.
Flexibility. Got to be able to pivot if you sense resistance or if you see a chance to find that common ground.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've prepared, built rapport, gathered intel, made our case. Final showdown. Concessions and agreement. This is where it gets real.
And this is where knowing your limits is key. That BTNA and ZUPA we talked about. Got to be firm on your non-negotiables, but still open to compromise. How contracts are viewed can be wildly different across cultures, too. Think of it as like a starting point versus a set-in-stone document.
Wow. So in some places, signing the contract is just the beginning. Now the script dives into global negotiation styles. Sounds like a trip around the world.
It is. First up, USA. Clear communication, data-driven, strong opening position.
Straight to the point. What about if we hop over to India?
India's fascinating. Their style comes from the principle of satyagraha. Emphasizes truth-seeking, finding solutions that work for everyone.
Gandhi in action, so it's less adversarial, more collaborative.
Exactly. Patience is key. They're masters at finding those win-win solutions.
Okay, next up. The Arab world. What do we need to know?
Preserving honor, saving face. Incredibly important. They're very relationship-focused, so that trust we built earlier, that's going to be key.
And they often use intermediaries, right?
Exactly. Helps ensure respect and keeps things smooth. Now let's head north to Sweden. What comes to mind?
I picture them as very calm, cool, collected.
You got it. Calm demeanor, patient, efficient. They value clarity and fairness, generally avoid conflict.
So, no dramatic shouting matches.
Not likely. Okay, let's spice things up a bit. How about Italy?
Ah, Italy. I'm picturing passionate conversations, lots of hand gestures, maybe a bit of charm.
You're getting it. Passion, expressiveness, definitely part of their style. Masters of nonverbal communication, gestures, facial expressions, that's all part of the game.
Got to pay attention to those cues. All right, where to next? How about Brazil?
Strategic planning, strong decision makers. They're not afraid to assert themselves, but they also value relationships, finding those win-win solutions.
So a blend of strategic thinking and that Brazilian warmth. Last stop on our world tour, China.
Negotiating in China is an art form. Two key concepts to remember, guanxi and face.
Guangxi's all about those personal connections, the networks, right?
Exactly. Building strong relationships is essential in China.
And face is about maintaining honor, reputation, both your own and those you're interacting with.
You got it. These elements are deeply ingrained in Chinese negotiations.
Wow, what a whirlwind tour. It's amazing how much culture shapes how we negotiate. But what about technology? Everything's moving online.
You're right, tech is changing the game. One exciting development is negotiation support systems, or NSS.
NSS.
Oh.
Sounds high-tech, like some kind of digital negotiation tool.
Exactly. They're your digital assistants, designed to make negotiation more efficient, effective. They can help you analyze information, communicate more clearly, even generate solutions.
That's amazing. But what about human translators? Are they being replaced by algorithms?
Not quite. They're still incredibly valuable, especially in cross-cultural situations where those nuances can make or break a deal. Choosing the right translator, briefing them properly, it's crucial for clear communication.
So tech can help, but it can't replace the human touch. Speaking of which, what about negotiating entirely online? E-negotiations.
Well, they definitely have advantages. Speed, cost-effectiveness, easy information sharing. But there are challenges too.
Like what? Is it harder to build trust when you're not face-to-face?
Exactly. You miss those nonverbal cues, that sense of connection you get in person.
It's a trade-off then.
It is, but we can find ways to bridge the gap. Video conferencing, for example, offers a nice compromise. You get the efficiency of online communication, but with a bit more of that personal touch.
Right, finding that balance. Well, this has been a fantastic overview of the world of negotiation. What are some key takeaways you want our listener to remember?
Anyone can become a better negotiator. It's about understanding those 5 phases, being adaptable to cultural nuances.
Preparation, building relationships, clear communication, and a healthy dose of adaptability. It sounds like a recipe for success.
It is. And remember, negotiation isn't just for CEOs and diplomats. We use it every day.
From buying a car to asking for a raise to even deciding what to watch on TV. And understanding cultural context is crucial. Each culture brings its own unique perspective to the table.
Embrace those differences. See them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Great point. Before we move on, here's a question for our listener. How can you apply these insights to your next negotiation, whether it's at work, at home, or even just deciding where to grab coffee?
Food for thought.
Keep exploring the world of negotiation. It's full of fascinating discoveries, endless possibilities.
Remember, preparation and empathy can take you far.
On to the next phase of our deep dive.
It's fascinating to think about how those 5 phases actually play out in different cultures. Like, preparing for a negotiation in China with that emphasis on guanxi, that would look totally different from prepping for a deal, say, in the U.S.
Oh, for sure. It's almost like the relationship building starts way before you even sit down at the table.
Exactly. And even during the negotiation itself, the way people communicate, it's just so different. In high-context cultures like China, reading between the lines, picking up on those unspoken messages, it's crucial.
Whereas in the U.S., it's more about being direct, transparent, get straight to the point, no time for beating around the bush.
Precisely. And those differences can really affect the persuasion phase, too. Imagine trying to persuade a Japanese team where harmony, group consensus, those are really valued. Coming on too strong, it could backfire.
Yeah, like that saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah.
Gentler approach might be way more effective.
Exactly. Cultural intelligence, understanding the unspoken rules of the game.
Speaking of cultural intelligence, the script talks about how different cultures approach conflict. We talked about high context and low context, but how does that play out in a real conflict situation?
Okay, let's say there's a disagreement, maybe about a product delivery timeline. A joint venture, American company and a Japanese company. The American team, they're low context, they might be very direct, express their frustration, maybe even openly criticize the delay.
Oof, yeah. That could create some tension. What about the Japanese team?
The Japanese team, they're high context. They might be more hesitant to address the conflict directly, especially if it involves, public criticism. They might try to hint at the problem or maybe use a third party to express their concerns.
Right. They don't want to cause anyone to lose face, disrupt that harmony.
Exactly. And you can see how these different approaches could easily lead to misunderstandings. Americans might see the Japanese as evasive, while the Japanese might see the Americans as, well, rude, confrontational.
So how do you bridge that gap? How do you handle those conflicts better? Anything in the script that helps with that?
Developing that cultural intelligence, being aware of those differences, and adapting your style accordingly.
So maybe the American team could try to be a bit more diplomatic, and the Japanese team may be a bit more direct about their concerns.
Exactly. Find that middle ground where both sides feel understood, respected.
The script also talked about how culture impacts decision-making, especially in business. It's fascinating to see how much those values influence something as practical as, making a decision.
For sure. In some cultures, decisions are made very quickly. High tolerance for risk. Think about the American entrepreneurial spirit. Speed and agility, that's valued.
Ready, fire, aim, classic.
Exactly. But in other cultures, like in Japan, decision-making is much more consensus-driven. Lots of emphasis on gathering input from everyone involved.
Less about making a quick call, more about building that consensus, even if it takes a bit longer.
Exactly. And this can create challenges when companies from different cultures try to work together. Imagine a German company, meticulous planning, and an American company, super fast-paced decision-making.
Yeah, could lead to some interesting clashes in the boardroom.
For sure. But it's also a chance to learn to innovate. By understanding those different approaches, we can actually come up with more creative, well-rounded solutions.
It's about embracing diversity, not just of people, but also of how people think, how they make decisions.
Exactly. Now, for a specific example, the script talks about the Japanese concept of nimawashi. It's really fascinating.
Nimawashi. Sounds like a martial arts move.
It's more like a strategic move. It's a process of informal consensus building, laying the groundwork before a decision is formally proposed. Lots of one-on-one conversations, gathering input, subtly building support for an idea.
Kind of like planting seeds, nurturing them before you present the full-blown plant.
Exactly. Subtle, strategic. Make sure everyone feels heard and that the decision ultimately has broad support.
That's so different from the top-down style you see in a lot of Western cultures.
It is. Great example of how cultural values shape even the most practical things.
The script also highlighted the German concept of Gründlichkeit. I've always admired that.
Gründlichkeit. Essentially means thoroughness, attention to detail. It's really a core part of German culture.
So that would translate to a very careful, analytical approach to making decisions.
Absolutely. Detail-oriented. Gather as much information as possible, weigh all the pros and cons, consider all the risks before making a decision.
No impulsive decisions there.
Yeah.
All about that careful planning and analysis.
Precisely. Now, to contrast that, let's look at the American approach. Often much more pragmatic, action-oriented.
Americans like to get things done, and quickly. Sometimes it's better to apologize than ask permission.
That's the spirit. Comfortable taking risks, making decisions even with incomplete information, adapting on the fly.
More about speed, agility, than spending months analyzing every little detail.
Exactly. And while that can be super effective, especially in fast-paced, innovative environments, it can also lead to, well, some impulsive decisions.
It's fascinating to see these approaches play out in the real world. Imagine a negotiation, a German company and an American company. Two different worlds colliding.
Absolutely. Bridging that gap requires a deep understanding of those cultural differences, that respect, and a willingness to adapt, find a middle ground.
The script talks about guanxi in China, which we touched on earlier. Can you unpack that a bit more, how it impacts decision-making?
Guanxi is all about those personal connections, building and nurturing that network of trust, that reciprocity. It's deeply embedded in Chinese culture, plays a huge role in business decisions.
So in China, it's not just what you know, it's who you know and how strong those relationships are.
Exactly. Decisions are often influenced by personal relationships, that trust, rather than just purely objective criteria.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. But in China, it's taken to a whole other level.
Exactly. It's a system that's worked well for them for centuries.
Next up, India. The script mentioned jugaad, which sounds intriguing.
Jugaad is about resourcefulness, adaptability, finding innovative, low-cost solutions, often using limited resources.
Like that MacGyver spirit, making the impossible possible with whatever you have at hand.
Exactly. Deeply ingrained in Indian culture. Thinking outside the box, finding ways to overcome those obstacles.
So, very practical, solution-oriented.
Absolutely. Something Western companies could learn a lot from, especially in today's world.
Final stop. Brazil. The script talked about Jatinho. Sounds like it's about problem-solving, too.
Jatinho is really unique to Brazil, hard to translate directly. It's a way of navigating tricky situations, often by finding creative workarounds, maybe bending the rules a little.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
But with a Brazilian twist.
Exactly. It reflects their culture, flexibility, adaptability, that emphasis on personal relationships.
Not always about strictly following the rules. It's about finding what works, even if it requires a little creativity.
Precisely. And while it can be very effective, it's important to use it wisely, ethically.
So fascinating how different cultures approach problem-solving, decision-making. It really highlights that richness, that diversity of thought.
Absolutely. Reminder that there are many paths to success. Embracing those different perspectives, that can lead to better outcomes.
Talking about different paths, let's talk more about how tech is changing things in negotiation. We touched on those negotiation support systems, the NSS. What are some real-world examples of how they're being used?
Imagine you're prepping for a complex negotiation. Some NSS can help you analyze the other side's BATNA, their ZUPA, gives you insights into their potential position.
It's like having a secret decoder ring. Super helpful for strategizing your own approach.
Exactly. Others can help you brainstorm solutions, simulate different scenarios, even analyze communication patterns to identify potential conflicts or misunderstandings.
Like a virtual negotiation coach in your pocket.
Precisely. Some can even help with logistics, scheduling, document sharing, tracking progress.
Sounds like they have the potential to really streamline the whole process. But with all these advances, is there even a place for human negotiators anymore?
Absolutely. Tech is a powerful tool, but it can't replace the human element. Building trust, understanding emotions, reading between the lines, that requires human intelligence, intuition.
So it's about finding that synergy between technology and human skills, using tech to enhance, not replace.
Exactly. The most successful negotiators in the future, they'll be the ones who can master both. The art of interaction and the science of technology-driven negotiation.
And those skills are important not just in business, but in everyday life.
Absolutely. Think about negotiating with your family, friends, colleagues. These principles apply everywhere.
It's about understanding those fundamentals, adapting them to different situations.
Precisely.
The script also talked about how different cultures view and handle contracts.
Contracts are a great example of how those cultural perspectives shape our understanding, even of things that seem very straightforward.
Like looking at the same contract through two completely different lenses.
Exactly. In some cultures, a contract is very formal, almost sacred. Once it's signed, it's set in stone. Any change would be seen as a lack of respect, lack of trust.
It's about honoring your word, sticking to the agreement no matter what.
Precisely. But in other cultures, it's viewed more as a starting point, a framework that can be adjusted as needed.
It's more of a living document, not just a rigid set of rules.
Exactly. Reflects a more flexible relational way of doing business.
The script mentioned that in the U.S., contracts are usually very formal, binding.
Right. Strong emphasis on the rule of law. Contracts are legally enforceable agreements.
So, sign on the dotted line, you're obligated to follow through no matter what.
Exactly. And that can create some challenges in cross-cultural negotiations. Imagine an American team and a Chinese team. That concept of guangxi, those personal connections, might lead to a more flexible view of the contract.
Yeah, the American team might be surprised if the Chinese team starts suggesting changes after the contract is signed.
Absolutely. It could be seen as a lack of respect, even a breach of trust.
So it's crucial to understand those nuances, communicate those expectations clearly from the very beginning.
Precisely. Now, in some Asian cultures like China or Japan,
I'm guessing contracts might be viewed differently there, given the importance of relationships.
you're right. They're often seen more as a symbol of the relationship, a starting point for that long-term partnership.
It's less about the legal specifics, more about the spirit of cooperation, mutual benefit.
Exactly. This can lead to more flexibility, willingness to adjust, renegotiate as the relationship grows.
The contract is like a roadmap, but the destination might change along the way.
Great analogy. Reflects a more holistic view, focused on the relationship.
What about Latin American cultures? The script talked about Brazil, that concept of jeitinho.
In Brazil, contracts are often seen as more flexible, adaptable, willingness to find those workarounds, to renegotiate terms as needed.
So if something unexpected happens, they might be more likely to look for a creative solution rather than sticking rigidly to the contract.
Exactly. Finding a solution that works for everyone, even if it means bending the rules a bit.
Fascinating how these values shape our understanding of something as fundamental as a contract. What about technology? Is it changing how contracts are created, signed, enforced?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's transforming the world of contracts in many ways. For example, we're seeing the rise of smart contracts, using blockchain technology to automate the enforcement of those terms.
So instead of relying on lawyers and courts, those terms are automatically executed by the blockchain.
Exactly. Could revolutionize contracting. More efficient, transparent, secure.
That's incredible. What other tech advancements are we seeing?
E-signatures are becoming more widely accepted as legally binding.
So no more printing, signing, scanning, emailing. It's all digital now.
Exactly. Makes it so much faster, more convenient. Just another way tech is making things easier.
It's amazing to see how technology is changing the game. But what about the human element? Are lawyers, negotiators, are they going to be replaced by robots?
Not quite. Technology can automate certain parts, but it can't replace human judgment, the expertise needed for those complex negotiations, drafting those agreements, building those relationships.
Again, it's about finding that balance. Tech enhances, but it doesn't replace.
Exactly. The most successful professionals in the future, they'll be the ones who embrace technology, integrate it into their skills.
It's all about adapting, evolving to thrive in this new world.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears a bit. Talk about nonverbal communication. The script highlighted those subtle cues, how powerful they can be, especially across cultures.
It's like a secret language. We're all speaking it, often without even realizing it.
So how do we become more fluent in this language? What are some of those key nonverbal cues?
Eye contact is a big one. In some cultures, direct eye contact means respect, engagement. In others, it can be seen as aggressive, challenging.
I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah.
In some places, looking someone directly in the eye, that can be misinterpreted.
Exactly. Really important to understand those cultural norms around eye contact before you go into a negotiation. Body language, too. How someone sits, stands, gestures. It can tell you a lot about their attitude, how they're feeling.
So leaning forward, they might be more engaged. Slouching back, maybe they're bored, disengaged.
Exactly. Crossed arms, maybe they're feeling defensive, closed off.
It's like a whole body language. What about facial expressions? Those seem pretty universal, right? A smile is a smile.
Well, some, like a smile or a frown, they're widely recognized, but even those can be interpreted differently depending on the culture.
So a smile doesn't always mean happiness, agreement.
Precisely. And some cultures are much more expressive than others.
It's about paying attention to those nuances, trying to understand the meaning behind the expression. Any other nonverbal cues we should watch for?
Personal space.
Yeah.
Huge variations across cultures. Standing close, it can be warmth, familiarity in some places. In others, it's intrusive, disrespectful.
Yeah, I remember feeling uncomfortable when someone stood really close to me. Later, I learned it was just normal in their culture.
Exactly. And it's important to be aware of our own nonverbal communication, too. Am I making eye contact? Are my arms crossed? What message am I sending?
It's about being mindful of those silent messages, even when we're not saying a word.
Exactly. Develop that awareness, both of our own cues and those of others. Use it to build rapport, understanding, trust.
It's like adding another layer of communication to the process.
It is. And one of the most fascinating things is that nonverbal communication, it can often reveal what someone's really thinking, feeling, even if their words are saying something different.
Like being a human lie detector, but with body language.
That's a great way to put it. Understanding those cues, it can make you a much more effective communicator, a more effective negotiator.
Now let's talk about power, how it's used in negotiations. The script talked about how different cultures view power, wield power, and how those differences can really impact the whole process.
Power dynamics, they can be very complex. Understanding those dynamics is essential for success.
Like a strategic game of chess, everyone's trying to position themselves for advantage.
Exactly. And the first move is to understand what power is, where it comes from.
So what is power in negotiation? Is it being the loudest person, having the most impressive title?
Power, simply put, it's the ability to influence others, to get them to do what you want. It's leverage, the ability to persuade or sometimes coerce someone to act.
So it's not necessarily about being aggressive, dominating, but about having the ability to shape the outcome.
Precisely. And that leverage, it can come from different sources.
Like what? What gives you power in a negotiation?
Information is a big one. If you have information the other side needs, wants, you have leverage.
Like a secret weapon you can use to your advantage.
Exactly. Expertise is another one.
If you're the only one who knows how to do something, you have power in that situation.
Precisely. And then there's positional power.
That's the power that comes from your role, your title.
Exactly. The CEO, they have a lot of positional power just by virtue of their position.
So understanding those different sources of power is crucial for negotiating well.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand how different cultures view it, how they use it.
So how do those cultural differences play out in a negotiation?
Some cultures, power is very hierarchical, positional.
Like in a traditional company, the boss has the power, employees follow orders.
Exactly. In other cultures, it's more fluid, relational.
Less about your title, more about your connections, your ability to build consensus.
Precisely. And those different perspectives can really change how things are done.
So in a culture that values hierarchy, you might see more top-down decisions, a more formal, structured negotiation process.
Exactly. But where relational power is valued, you might see more collaboration, consensus building, less emphasis on those titles, that hierarchy.
It's about recognizing those cultural nuances, adapting your style accordingly.
Absolutely. And remember, power isn't always a zero-sum game.
Meaning that one person doesn't have to win at the expense of the other.
Exactly. The best negotiators, they're often the ones who can find those win-win solutions. Both sides feel like they gained something.
Not about dominating, but finding solutions that benefit everyone.
Precisely. And that's where persuasion comes in.
Okay, let's talk persuasion. What are some good strategies to get someone to see things your way? Is it about being a smooth talker? Some Jedi mind tricks?
It's more about understanding people, building those genuine connections. One of the best techniques is to build rapport, establish a connection with the other person.
People buy from people they like.
Exactly. When you have that rapport, they're more likely to be open to your ideas, trust your judgment.
How do you build that rapport? Any secret handshakes I should know?
Less about secret handshakes, more about genuine human connection. Active listening. Really pay attention. Try to understand their perspective, acknowledge their concerns.
Make them feel heard, like their opinions matter.
Exactly. And find common ground. Highlight shared interests, values.
Building that bridge is key to persuasion.
Precisely. Once you've got that connection, you can start presenting your arguments in a way that's persuasive, compelling.
So how do you go from rapport to actual persuasion? Any tips?
Be clear, concise. Don't overwhelm them with too much information, too much jargon.
Keep it simple, straightforward, easy to understand.
Exactly. Examples, stories, they can be powerful too.
Yeah, stories are great. Bring your arguments to life. Make them more relatable.
Exactly. It's also important to anticipate objections, address them head on.
Put yourself in their shoes. Think about what their concerns might be, what might make them say no.
Exactly. And be ready to address those in a thoughtful, persuasive way.
Show them you understand their perspective.
Yeah.
You're willing to find a solution that works for both of you.
Absolutely. And remember, persuasion isn't manipulation. It's not trickery.
It's not about using shady tactics just to get what you want.
Exactly. It's about building trust, finding solutions that benefit everyone.
Creating those win-win situations. Everyone walks away happy.
Precisely. But even with the best intentions, even with good techniques, you'll run into resistance sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Not every negotiation is going to be smooth sailing.
Yeah.
What do you do to overcome that resistance? How do you get things back on track?
Try to understand the root cause of that resistance.
So don't just focus on the surface, dig a little deeper, understand what's really going on.
Exactly. Is it lack of information, misunderstanding, fear of loss? Once you understand the root cause, you can address it better.
Sometimes just acknowledging their concerns can help too.
Absolutely. It shows you've heard them, you respect their perspective, and then you can start to reframe things, more positive, more solution-oriented.
So instead of focusing on what they might lose, you highlight what they might gain.
Exactly. And sometimes the best approach is just patience, persistence.
Don't give up at the first sign of pushback. Keep the conversation going. Keep building that rapport. Look for common ground.
Exactly. Approach it with a collaborative spirit, a genuine desire to find a solution. That's how you increase your chances of success.
That makes sense. But what about those times when you're dealing with someone who's just difficult? The type who loves conflict, pushes your buttons. How do you navigate that?
Difficult people, they can be challenging, but it's a skill you can learn. First step is to try to understand why they're being difficult.
So again, look beyond the behavior, figure out the motivation.
Exactly. Are they feeling threatened, insecure, protecting their interests. Or maybe they're just having a bad day.
Once you understand what's driving them, you can address it better.
Exactly. Sometimes just acknowledging their feelings can help de-escalate things.
Show them you recognize their emotions, even if you don't agree with their behavior.
Exactly. And set clear boundaries, expectations.
So let them know what's acceptable, what's not. Stand your ground, protect your own interests.
Exactly. And be prepared to walk away.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to cooperate, if their behavior becomes abusive, disrespectful, sometimes the best thing to do is just say no. Move on.
Sometimes you just got to walk away.
Precisely.
Now let's talk about something that sometimes gets lost in the heat of the moment. Ethics.
Ethics. So important to approach negotiations ethically.
So it's not just about getting what you want, it's about doing it the right way.
Exactly. Be honest, transparent.
No lying, no misleading, no shady tactics.
Exactly. Be fair, reasonable in your demands.
Don't try to exploit the other person. Pressure them into something that's not good for them.
Absolutely. And be respectful of their values, their beliefs, even if you don't agree with them.
Treat them with dignity, respect, even when things get heated.
Exactly. Remember, your reputation for ethical behavior, that's one of your greatest assets.
People want to do business with someone they know is ethical, fair.
Absolutely. That trust is invaluable for building strong, lasting relationships.
Let's talk about the importance of preparation. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right?
Absolutely. Preparation is the foundation. The more prepared you are, the more confident, the more effective you'll be.
What are the key steps to good preparation? Is it just about reading every book, every article on negotiation?
Reading can be helpful, but it's more about being strategic. First, define your goals. What do you want to achieve? Ideal outcomes, deal breakers.
So before I even think about the other side, I need to know what I want.
Exactly. And be realistic.
Don't set myself up for failure by aiming for the impossible.
Exactly. Next, gather information about the other side.
Do your research. Their needs, interests, constraints, their style.
Precisely. The more you know, the better you can anticipate their moves, tailor your approach.
Like scouting the other team before a big game.
Great analogy. Develop a strong BATNA too.
Our safety net. What we'll do if the deal falls apart.
Exactly. The stronger it is, the more leverage you have.
Because you're not desperate. You have options.
Precisely.
Ah.
Finally, practice.
Don't just wing it. Practice your opening. Anticipate objections. Think about different scenarios. Like rehearsing for a play, but with real-world stakes.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll be when you're actually there.
Makes sense. Let's talk about a common scenario. Negotiating salary. Any tips for that?
Like any negotiation, start with research.
Find out the market rate for my position, my experience level.
Exactly. Use online resources, talk to people, get a sense of what others are making.
And don't be afraid to aim high.
Exactly. Always better to start higher, negotiate down, than to start too low.
Know your worth. Don't be afraid to ask for it.
Exactly. But be ready to back up your request.
So have a list of accomplishments, skills, my contributions.
Exactly. And be ready to show how your skills and experience will benefit the company.
Show your value. Demonstrate why you're worth that investment.
Precisely. And remember, salary is just one piece. You can negotiate other things too. Vacation time, flexibility, professional development.
It's about creating a package that really works for you, helps you reach your goals.
Exactly.
Now, negotiation can be emotional. What are some tips for keeping your cool under pressure? I know I've been in situations where I felt my heart racing, palms sweating.
It's completely natural. It's how our bodies react to stress. But it's important to stay calm even when the other side is pushing your buttons. It's completely natural is how our bodies react to stress. But it's important to stay calm even when the other side is trying to push your buttons.
Easier said than done. Any Jedi mind tricks for staying cool under pressure?
It's more about mental strategies. Take a deep breath. Try to detach yourself emotionally.
So step back, take a breath, see things from a more objective perspective, like watching a movie instead of being in it.
Exactly. Stay focused on your goals. Don't get sidetracked by their tactics or let their emotions throw you off.
Keep your eye on the prize. Don't get caught up in the drama.
Exactly. And it's okay to take a break if things get too heated.
Yeah, sometimes walking away for a few minutes can help clear your head, come back with a fresh perspective.
Absolutely. Helps you regain your composure. Avoid saying or doing something you'll regret. And if you're getting really emotional, maybe talk to a trusted advisor, a mentor, get some support, guidance.
Like having a coach in your corner.
Yeah.
Helps you see the bigger picture, make rational decisions.
Precisely. That outside perspective can be really valuable.
Wow. This deep dive into negotiation has been amazing. We've covered so much. The 5 phases: cultural communication, persuasion, ethics.
It has been a fascinating journey, exploring all those different aspects of this crucial skill.
One of the biggest takeaways for me was the power of cultural intelligence. Understanding, appreciating those different perspectives, that's so important in today's world.
Absolutely. The more we learn about other cultures, the better we can build those bridges, find common ground.
Recognizing that there are many ways of seeing the world. Those differences, they can be strengths, not weaknesses.
Exactly. Diversity of thought, that's what fuels innovation, creativity.
Another big takeaway was that negotiation doesn't have to be a battle. It can be a collaborative process, finding a solution that works for everyone.
I agree. It's about moving away from me versus you to we.
It takes empathy, respect, a real desire to understand the other person's point of view.
Well said. And remember, negotiation is a skill, and it can be learned, improved with practice. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Like learning an instrument or a sport, the more you do it, the better you get.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to push yourself, try new approaches, learn from every experience.
Great advice to our listeners out there. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep negotiating. It's a skill that can help you achieve your goals, build relationships, navigate this complex world we live in.
And with a little effort and a willingness to see things from different perspectives, you can achieve amazing things.
Until next time, happy negotiating.